Commander Valera stepped off the transport shuttle and onto the pristine floors of the Galactic Council station. Her silver eyes scanned the massive hall with the practiced efficiency of someone who had visited 47 different civilizations. The azure skin that marked her as Vishan royalty seemed to glow under the artificial lights. She carried herself with absolute confidence, her tall frame draped in the formal robes of a military commander. Today's assignment was simple. Almost boring, really. The Council had asked her to assess the newest species, petitioning for membership. Humans, a small species from a planet called Earth, located in an unremarkable spiral arm of the galaxy. Valera had already completed most of her research during the journey. The data was clear and conclusive. Humans were merchants, traders, artists, diplomats. They had appeared in galactic space only 30 years ago, arriving in modest ships filled with goods and curiosity. They established trade routes, opened cultural exchanges, and smiled at everyone they met. Their ships carried no visible weapons. Their stations had minimal defenses. In 3 decades of contact, not a single human had ever been involved in a military conflict. Valera found it almost refreshing. Most species came to the stars carrying their weapons and their wars with them. The Kryn brought their raiders. The Vex brought their battle fleets. The Mordani brought their assassination guilds. But humans? They brought coffee, music, and an endless desire to talk about everything. Her preliminary report was already drafted. She would observe the human delegation for 2 weeks, confirm her research, and recommend them for provisional membership in the economic cooperation zones. Nothing more. Humans were too fragile, too peaceful, too soft for anything beyond trading partnerships. The human ambassador was waiting in Conference Room 7. Valera entered and found a woman in her 50s sitting calmly at the large table. She wore simple clothes compared to the elaborate outfits of other species diplomats. Her hair was starting to gray, and she had smile lines around her eyes. "Commander Valera," the woman said, rising and offering her hand in the human greeting gesture. "I'm Ambassador Hana. Welcome to our delegation." Valera accepted the handshake, noting how small and soft the human's hand felt. No claws, no enhanced strength. Just warm skin and a gentle grip. "Thank you, Ambassador. I look forward to learning about your people. Please sit. Would you like some tea? It's from Earth." They settled into what Valera expected would be a routine interview. She asked standard questions about human government, economy, and social structure. Hannah answered each one with patience and clarity. The humans spoke about cooperation between their nations, about artistic movements, about their love of exploration. "Your species seems remarkably peaceful," Valera observed, making notes on her datapad. "In all my research, I found no records of human military conflicts, no warrior traditions, no battle honors or combat citations." Hannah smiled that gentle smile again. "We prefer peace, Commander. We've seen enough of the alternative." "The alternative?" "War, conflict, violence." Hannah poured more tea. "We understand its costs better than you might think." Valera filed that away as simple rhetoric. Of course, every species claimed to understand the costs of war. But the Veshans had actually fought in the Great Spiral Conflict. They had lost billions. They knew what real war meant. These humans, with their soft hands and peaceful trade routes, couldn't possibly comprehend true violence. The interview continued for 3 hours. Valera met other members of the delegation. A scientist named Jiwan, who excitedly explained human biotechnology. An economist named Minho, who had fascinating ideas about resource distribution. A cultural attach named Sumi, who offered to teach. Valera about human art. They were all so ordinary, pleasant, harmless. That evening, the council hosted a formal dinner for all the delegations. Valera found herself seated between Hana and a Kryn trade representative. The Kryn were massive warriors, 7 feet tall with thick armor plating and natural weapons. They respected strength above all else and barely tolerated lesser species. The Kryn representative, Vermath, looked down at Hana with obvious disdain. "Your species is small," he rumbled. "Weak. Why does the Council waste time on creatures who cannot even defend themselves?" Hana didn't seem offended. She simply smiled and continued eating her meal. Valera felt obligated to respond. "The Council values all species, Vermath. Not every civilization needs to be built on warfare. Then they will be conquered by those who are." The Kryn snorted. "We manage," Hana said quietly. "How?" Vermath demanded. "You have no warrior caste, no battle fleets, no strength. What happens when predators come to your worlds?" "We adapt," Hana replied, still calm. "We've had a lot of practice." Valera intervened before Vermath could continue insulting the humans. After dinner, she walked with Hana back toward the human delegation quarters. "I apologize for Vermath's rudeness," Valera said. "The Kryn can be ... direct." "It's fine," Hana assured her. "We've encountered worse attitudes. People often make assumptions about us based on first impressions. Well, your people do present as quite peaceful. We are peaceful. Commander." Hana stopped and looked directly at Valera with those dark human eyes. "But peaceful doesn't mean helpless. There's a difference many species fail to recognize." "Of course," Valera agreed, though she didn't really understand the distinction. In her experience, species were either strong enough to defend themselves or they weren't. Humans clearly fell into the latter category. Over the next 2 weeks, Valera observed the human delegation carefully. She watched them negotiate trade agreements with species twice their size. She saw them diffuse arguments between hostile delegations with careful diplomacy. She noticed how they always seemed aware of their surroundings, how they moved with surprising grace despite their small stature. But nothing changed her fundamental assessment. Humans were merchants and diplomats. They had carved out a small, safe niche in galactic civilization by being useful and non-threatening. They would never be warriors. They would never command respect through strength. They would always be the small, soft species that other civilizations protected or ignored. Valera prepared her final report. She recommended provisional membership with strict limitations. Humans could participate in economic councils and cultural exchanges. But military matters? Defense planning? Strategic alliances? Those should remain the domain of species who actually understood strength. She submitted the report, feeling satisfied with her thoroughness. She had given the humans a fair assessment based on all available evidence. They were exactly what they appeared to be. Commander Valera had no idea how completely wrong she was. She wouldn't understand her mistake until 3 weeks later, when blood would paint the floors of Trading Station 7, and a young man named Tay would show her what humans actually were beneath their peaceful smiles. Trading Station 7 floated in neutral space between 3 major trade routes. It was a hub of commerce, a place where dozens of species came to buy, sell, and exchange goods. Valera had been assigned to conduct follow-up assessments here, observing how humans interacted with the broader galactic community, in less formal settings than the Council Station. She had been on Station 7 for 5 days when the alarm started screaming. The station's calm atmosphere shattered instantly. Vendors abandoned their stalls. Civilians ran for shelter. Valera's translator implant decoded the emergency broadcast. Kryn raiders. Multiple hostiles. All security personnel respond. Valera's heart sank. Kryn raiders were infamous throughout the galaxy. They were the violent fringe of an already violent species. warriors who rejected even the minimal civilization of Kryn society. They attacked trade stations, took what they wanted, and killed anyone who resisted. Station security tried to respond. Valera watched through a viewport as Vex guards in powered armor rushed to meet the raiders. The fight lasted less than 2 minutes before the security team broke and scattered. Kryn raiders were simply too strong, too brutal, too experienced in violence. Valera ran. She wasn't a coward, but she was a military analyst, not a combat soldier. Her training said to retreat, find cover, and wait for proper military response. She sprinted down corridors as the sounds of destruction echoed behind her. Screams, weapons fire, the distinctive roar of Kryn battle cries. She found herself in the medical bay, hoping to hide among the equipment until the raiders passed. But 3 Kryn warriors burst through the main entrance before she could reach the emergency exit. They spotted her immediately. The lead raider was massive, even by Kryn standards, nearly 8 feet tall with scars covering his armor plating. He grinned, showing rows of sharp teeth. Veshin, pretty, you'll bring good price. Valera backed against the wall, her mind racing. She had no weapons, no armor, no combat training beyond basic self-defense. 3 Kryn warriors stood between her and freedom. This was how she would die, or worse, be taken as a slave. Then a voice spoke in calm, accented galactic comment. Stay behind me. Valera turned her head. A human stood in the doorway to the medical supply room. He was young, maybe mid-20s in human years. Average height for his species, perhaps 5 feet 10 inches. He wore the standard gray uniform of station security, though. His armor looked inadequate compared to the Kryn's natural plating. His name tag read, Tay. The Kryn raiders looked at him and laughed. The leader gestured dismissively. Little human, go away or die. Tay didn't move. He stood relaxed, his hands empty, his expression neutral. This is your one chance to leave. Brave words from meat, another raider growled. What happened next would replay in Valera's memory for the rest of her life. The Kryn leader charged. He was fast despite his size, crossing the distance in 2 massive strides, his clawed hand sweeping toward Tay's head with enough force to decapitate. Valera screamed a warning. Tay moved. He didn't dodge backward like any sensible being would. He stepped forward into the attack, his body rotating. The Kryn's claws passed through empty air as Tay ducked under the swing. In the same motion, the human grabbed a metal tray from a nearby medical cart. The tray struck the Kryn's elbow joint with a sharp crack. The raider howled and staggered. Tay didn't stop moving. He spun, using his momentum to drive his knee into the Kryn's lower back. Right where the armor plates separated, the massive warrior crashed into a medical cabinet. The second Kryn attacked from the side, moving to flank. Tay saw him coming. He threw the tray like a discus, striking the raider in the face. While the Kryn was distracted, Tay grabbed a rolling equipment stand and shoved it hard. The stand's wheels made it slide fast across the smooth floor. It hit the second Kryn in the legs, tangling him up. The third raider was smarter. He approached carefully, his claws extended, trying to corner Tay against the wall. But Tay used the wall. He jumped, planted 1 foot against it, and launched himself sideways. He landed behind the Kryn and struck at the back of the warrior's knee with brutal precision. The Kryn's leg buckled. Tay moved like water, like wind, like nothing Valera had ever seen. He used every object in the room as a weapon. A medical scanner became a club. A cabinet door became a shield. He struck at joints, at gaps in armor, at vulnerable points, with the precision of someone who had studied Kryn anatomy in detail. The first raider recovered and charged again, roaring with rage. Tay didn't try to match his strength. Instead, he redirected it. He grabbed the Kryn's arm as it swung, used the warrior's own momentum, and guided him face first into a doorframe. The impact was devastating. The Kryn dropped and didn't move. A second raider finally untangled himself and attacked with both claws. Tay ducked under the first swipe, rolled under the second, and came up with a piece of broken equipment. He jammed it into the gap between the Kryn's chest plates and twisted. The raider screamed and fell backward. Only the third Kryn remained standing. He looked at his fallen companions, then at the small human standing calmly among the wreckage. For the first time, Valera saw fear in a Kryn's eyes. "You. What are you?" The raider gasped. "Station security," Tay replied. The Kryn turned and ran. Tay let him go. He turned to Valera, breathing hard but steady. Blood ran from a cut on his shoulder where one of the Kryn's claws had grazed him. "Are you injured, Commander?" Valera couldn't speak. She stared at him, her mind unable to process what she had just witnessed. This ordinary human, this security officer, had just defeated 3 Kryn warriors in close combat. 3. The Kryn were among the most feared fighters in the galaxy. Commander? Tay took a step toward her, concern on his face. "Are you hurt?" "No," she managed to whisper. "No, I'm fine." Station security arrived moments later, along with a rapid response team from a nearby patrol ship. They secured the medical bay and began treating the wounded. The Kryn raiders were captured. Station 7 was safe again, but Valera couldn't stop watching Tay as medics treated his shoulder wound. He winced slightly when they cleaned the cut, but otherwise seemed unbothered. He gave a brief report to the security chief, accepted medical treatment, and then returned to his normal duties, like it was nothing. Like he hadn't just done something impossible. Valera approached him before he left. "Officer Tay, I need to ask you something." He turned and smiled politely. "Of course, Commander. How did you do that? How did you fight 3 Kryn warriors and win?" Tay looked genuinely confused by the question. "Standard close-quarters combat training, Commander. Every security officer learns it." "Standard?" Valera repeated. "That was standard?" "Well, I specialized in it during my military service. Before I took this position." He paused. "Is something wrong, Commander?" Everything was wrong. Everything Valera thought she knew about humans was wrong. "Your military service," she said slowly. "I thought humans had no military." "Oh, we don't anymore. Not since the unification. But I served in the Defense Corps before the dissolution." He checked his datapad. "I'm sorry, Commander, but I need to finish my patrol route. If you need anything else, please contact Station Security." He walked away, leaving Valera standing in the damaged medical bay, surrounded by unconscious Kryn warriors. Her entire worldview crumbling around her. She had seen something today that shouldn't exist. A human warrior dot, and if the galactic databases had missed this, what else had they missed about humanity? Valera didn't sleep that night. She sat in her quarters aboard Station 7, replaying the fight over and over in her mind. She had requested and received the security footage from multiple angles. She watched Tay move, fight, and win against impossible odds. By morning, she had made a decision. She needed answers. Real answers. Not the sanitized reports in the galactic databases. She requested an immediate meeting with Ambassador Hana at the Human Embassy back on the Council Station. The ambassador agreed without hesitation. Valera took the first available shuttle, her mind churning the entire journey. The Human Embassy was smaller than most species diplomatic installations. It occupied just 3 floors of one tower, decorated simply with artwork from Earth and comfortable furniture. Hana met her in a modest conference room that looked more like someone's living room than a formal meeting space. "Commander Valera," Hana greeted her warmly. I heard about the incident at Station 7. I'm glad you're safe. Please, sit. Valera sat, but she couldn't maintain diplomatic pleasantries. Ambassador, I need to know the truth about your people. Hana's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. Understanding, perhaps. Or maybe resignation. What would you like to know? Everything I was told about humans is wrong, isn't it? That depends on what you are told. That you're a peaceful trading species. That you have no military. No warriors. No combat traditions. Valera leaned forward. I watched one of your security officers defeat 3 Kryn, raiders in hand-to-hand combat. 3. Do you understand how impossible that should be? Hana poured tea from an earth ceramic pot. The ritual seemed absurdly calm given the conversation. His name is Tay, correct? Former Defense Corps, specialized in close-quarters combat. Good man. He sends his mother flowers every week. I don't care about his personal life, Valera said, though she immediately felt rude for the outburst. I care about what he represents. Who is he really? Some kind of elite special forces operative you planted as a security officer? No, Hana said simply. He's exactly what his file says. A former soldier who now works station security. There's nothing special about Tay except his dedication to helping others. Nothing special? He fought like a master warrior. He was trained as a soldier, yes, as were millions of other humans. Hana set down her teacup. Commander, I think you're asking the wrong question. You shouldn't be asking who Tay is. You should be asking who we all are. She activated the room's holographic display. Images appeared, floating in the air between them. Valera saw humans in primitive armor, fighting with crude metal weapons. The images shifted, showing humans in increasingly sophisticated military gear across different time periods. Trenches filled with mud and death. Soldiers in camouflage moving through jungles. Pilots in cockpits. Infantry in powered armor. Naval vessels larger than cities. Weapons that could level mountains. Thousands of images. Tens of thousands. Millions of soldiers across thousands of years. We told you the truth, Hana said quietly. We are a peaceful species. We prefer trade and diplomacy. We choose cooperation over conflict. But we didn't tell you why we make those choices. The images continued. Battle after battle. War after war. Valera saw destruction on a scale that made her sick. Entire cities reduced to rubble. Landscapes poisoned. Oceans burning. For most of our history, we fought ourselves, Hana continued. Nation against nation. Ideology against ideology. Religion against religion. We invented new ways to kill each other with terrifying creativity. We built weapons that could destroy our entire world. And we came very close to using them. Why? Valera whispered. Because we're good at war, Commander. Frighteningly good. We're persistence predators from a death world. We evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We learned to work in groups to bring down animals larger and stronger than ourselves. We developed intelligence specifically to outsmart our enemies. The images shifted again. Now Valera saw what looked like peace treaties. Humans from different nations shaking hands. Weapons being destroyed. Military bases being converted to research centers. 50 years ago, we unified, Hana said. After the last Great War, we decided we were done. Done fighting ourselves. Done wasting our potential on destruction. We dismantled our militaries, consolidated our weapons, and chose a different path. But Tay said he served in the Defense Corps. Every human serves 2 years in the Defense Corps after they turn 18. It's universal. We learn first aid, disaster response, basic engineering, and yes, combat training. Because we remember what happens when we're not prepared to defend what we've built. Valera stared at the holographic display. Every human? All of you have military training? Basic training, yes. Some, like Tay, choose to specialize. But even our teachers, our artists, our farmers, they all know how to fight if they must. Hana's expression was sad now. We're not proud of our history, Commander. We're not proud of how many of our own people we killed before we learned better. But we're not ashamed of our ability to defend ourselves either. You lied to the Council. We told the Council we have no standing military. That's true. We told them we prefer peace. That's also true. We simply didn't volunteer our complete military history because it wasn't relevant to our application for economic cooperation. Hana met Valera's eyes directly. Would you have believed us if we had? If we had said, we're peaceful now, but we spent 5,000 years perfecting warfare? Valera knew the answer. She would have recommended rejecting their application. Every council member would have, so you hide what you are. We are exactly what we appear to be, Hana corrected gently. Peaceful people who want to trade, learn, and cooperate with other species. The fact that we could be something else, if necessary, doesn't change what we choose to be. The holographic display shifted one final time. Valera saw Tay's service record. Decorated combat veteran. Expert in multiple fighting styles. Trained in weapons, tactics, and strategy. Then the record showed his transition to civilian life. Security work. Community service. Teaching self-defense to young people. A warrior who chose to be a protector instead. How many humans like Tay are out there? Valera asked. Millions, Hana replied. Working as teachers, engineers, farmers, artists. Living peaceful lives. But if you threaten them or those they protect. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Valera thought about the Kryn raiders. How quickly Tay had neutralized them. How efficiently he had moved. And he was just a regular soldier, not even special forces. What would happen if humanity ever decided to wage war again? Valera asked. Real war against another species? Hana was silent for a long moment. I hope we never find out, Commander, because I think it would be the worst thing the galaxy has ever seen. We've spent 50 years building peace. We've chosen a better path. But if we were forced back to war, she shook her head. We remember how, and we're very, very good at it. Valera left the embassy with more questions than answers. But one thing was absolutely clear. Her assessment of humanity had been catastrophically wrong. She needed to inform the Council. But what would she tell them? That the small, peaceful trading species was actually composed entirely of trained warriors? That every smiling human merchant or friendly human diplomat had been taught how to kill? Would anyone believe her? She thought about Tay again, sending flowers to his mother every week. A warrior with a gentle heart. Maybe that was what made humans so dangerous. They weren't mindless berserkers like some species. They were thoughtful, caring people who could become devastating fighters when necessary. Valera returned to her quarters and began drafting a new report. The Council needed to know the truth about humanity, not all of it. 2 months later, Valera found herself on a transport heading toward Haven, the newest human colony world. The Council had accepted her revised assessment with skepticism, but agreed to let her continue her observations. They wanted to know more about how these peaceful warriors actually lived when they weren't under diplomatic scrutiny. Haven was located in a frontier sector, far from the major trade routes. The planet was beautiful green forests, blue oceans, breathable atmosphere. Humans had chosen well. The colony was only 4 years old, home to about 20,000 people. Valera expected to find a typical colony. Prefab buildings, resource extraction, maybe some basic agriculture. What she found instead looked more like a park than a settlement. Humans had built their structures to blend with the natural environment. Gardens grew everywhere. Children played in open spaces while adults worked at various tasks. She saw farmers tending crops, engineers maintaining power systems, teachers working with young people, and artists creating sculptures in a central plaza. It looked idyllic, peaceful, everything the humans claimed to be. But Valera watched more carefully now. She noticed things she would have missed before. Station 7. The way even the farmers moved with awareness of their surroundings. The subtle organization of the settlement's layout, with clear sight lines and multiple routes between buildings. The fact that many storage buildings had reinforced walls and heavy doors. A colony administrator, a woman named Una, greeted Valera warmly. She was in her 40s, with kind eyes and a ready smile. She gave Valera a tour of Haven, explaining their agricultural projects, their water reclamation systems, their plans for expansion. "We're building something good here," Una said as they walked through an orchard. "A place where people can live in harmony with nature, where children can grow up safe and happy." Valera couldn't help but ask, "Administrator Una, do you have military training?" Una's smile didn't fade, but something shifted in her eyes. The same shift Valera had seen in Hana's eyes. "I served 6 years in the Defense Corps, specialized in logistics and strategic planning." "Why do you ask?" "Just curious about human society." "Ah." Una picked an apple from a tree and offered it to Valera. "Yes, I was a soldier once. Now I grow apples and help build a community. It's better this way." That evening, Valera was having dinner with Una and several other colonists when the alarm sounded. Not station alarms this time. Planetary defense sirens dot the peaceful dinner, dissolved instantly. Colonists moved with frightening speed and organization. Una's expression transformed from friendly administrator to something else entirely. Something hard and focused. "Vrex," she said, checking a datapad. "Swarm force. Incoming from the northern hemisphere." Valera's blood ran cold. The Vrex were the galaxy's nightmare. A hive mind species that consumed everything in their path. They had destroyed civilizations. Entire council fleets retreated when the Vrex appeared in significant numbers. "We need to evacuate," Valera said. "Your colony can't possibly defend against a Vrex swarm." Una looked at her with those hard eyes. "Where would we evacuate to? There's no fleet in range. No nearby stations. Haven is our home. We defend it." She tapped her datapad 3 times. Protocol red line. All personnel. What happened next would haunt and amaze Valera forever. The peaceful colony transformed in less than 15 minutes. Storage buildings opened to reveal weapons and ammunition. Farmers set down their tools and picked up rifles with practiced ease. Teachers became medics. Engineers became artillery operators. Artists became communication specialists. The entire settlement reorganized into a defensive network. Colonists moved to predetermined positions without chaos or panic. Children were gathered into reinforced shelters by designated caregivers. Supply lines were established. Fields of fire were cleared. Valera watched a man she had met earlier, Rue, who taught mathematics to young students, now coordinating artillery emplacements with calm precision. "You taught children this morning," she said to him. Ryu smiled, though his eyes never left his targeting display. "Still teaching. Just a different lesson today. Everyone serves, Commander. We all learn to build. We all learn to protect what we build." Una appeared beside Valera, now wearing combat armor and carrying a rifle. "You should get to a shelter, Commander. This is going to get ugly. I've observed combat before. Not like this, you haven't. The Vrex came with the dawn. Thousands of them. Bio warriors bred for killing, each one a nightmare of claws, teeth, an armored carapace. Flying hunters swooped from above. Massive siege beasts lumbered toward the colony's perimeter. Behind them came the smaller drone forms, endless waves of expendable soldiers. The humans opened fire. Valera had seen military engagements before. She had watched professional soldiers fight with discipline and training. But this was different. These weren't professional soldiers. They were farmers and teachers and artists who had become soldiers when necessary, and they were devastating. The artillery Rue commanded struck the siege beasts first, explosive shells finding vulnerable points with terrifying accuracy. Rifle fire from the perimeter defenses cut down bio-warriors in organized volleys. When flying hunters dove toward the settlement, they met concentrated fire from multiple angles. The Vrex adapted quickly. They always did. They changed their approach, their tactics, their formation. But the humans adapted faster. Yuna led the defense from a central command post, adjusting strategies in real time. When the Vrex concentrated on the southern perimeter, she shifted forces to compensate. When they tried to flank from the east, she had already positioned reserves. Valera watched in amazement as a group of colonists executed a counterattack. They moved like water, flowing around obstacles, supporting each other, striking at vulnerable points, and retreating before the Vrex could respond. She recognized the T. Tactics. They were similar to what Tay had used against the Kryn, but scaled up to company-level combat. The battle raged for 6 hours. 6 hours of constant violence, noise, and death. The Vrex came in waves. The humans met each wave with disciplined fire and tactical flexibility. When ammunition ran low, they improvised. When positions became untenable, they fell back to prepared secondary lines. When opportunities appeared, they exploited them ruthlessly. Valera saw Yuna herself lead a strike team that destroyed a Vrex coordination node. The colony administrator moved through the chaos with lethal grace. Her rifle barking precisely placed shots while she coordinated her team's movements through a COM system. Warrior leading warriors. As dawn broke fully, the Vrex began to withdraw. They had lost too many units for too little gain. The hive mind calculated that Haven wasn't worth the cost. The humans let them go. They didn't pursue. They simply watched the Vrex retreat and then began the grim work of dealing with the aftermath. Valera emerged from the bunker where she had observed most of the battle. The colony was damaged, but intact. Buildings showed blast marks and claw gouges. The northern perimeter was torn up, but Haven still stood. The human cost was visible in the rows of bodies being carefully gathered by grieving colonists. 847 people. Valera watched families identifying their dead, saw children crying for parents who wouldn't return, witnessed the terrible price of victory. Yuna stood in the center of the settlement, her armor scorched and dented, blood on her face from a cut above her eye. She was hugging her own children, 2 young girls, who had spent the battle in the shelters. Tears streamed down Yuna's face as she held them, the warrior and the mother, both existing in the same person. Later, as medics treated the wounded and engineers assessed damage, Valera approached Yuna. "I've never seen anything like that," Valera said quietly. "A colony without orbital defenses, without a fleet, repelling a Vrex swarm." Yuna looked exhausted. "We paid for it, Commander. Nearly 900 dead. Families destroyed. Children orphaned." She wiped her eyes. "This is why we prefer peace. Because we know exactly what war costs. But you won. We survived. There's a difference." Yuna looked at the damaged settlement, at the grieving families, at the destroyed buildings. "Tomorrow we rebuild. We bury our dead. We care for our wounded. And we teach our children that this is what we do. We protect what we love. But we never glorify the violence it takes to do it." Valera watched as colonists began the rebuilding process, even before all the dead were gathered. Humans working together, supporting each other, moving forward despite their grief. That night, Valera sat alone in her guest quarters and tried to write a report for the council. But how could she explain what she had witnessed? How could she make them understand? Humans were the most dangerous species she had ever encountered. Not because they were naturally violent, not because they gloried in war, but because they were warriors who desperately wanted to be anything else. Because they knew how to fight with devastating efficiency, but chose to build gardens instead, because they were predators who had decided to protect rather than prey. If humanity ever decided that peace had failed, if they ever chose war over cooperation, Valera didn't want to imagine what that would mean for the galaxy. Valera sat in her private quarters on Council Station, staring at the blank screen where her final report should be. 3 months had passed since Haven. 3 months of thinking, analyzing, and trying to understand what she had learned about humanity. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, but didn't move. How could she write this? How could she make the council understand what she barely understood herself? Her datapad chirped. A message from Tay. She had stayed in contact with him after the incident on Station 7. He sent her updates occasionally, simple messages about his life. This one included a picture of him teaching a self-defense class to young people from various species. "Thought you'd like to see this," the message read. "Helping others learn to protect themselves. Much better than fighting raiders." Valera smiled despite herself. The warrior teaching peace through strength. Another message arrived, this one from Una. "Haven is rebuilt. We lost people, but we're growing again. Planting new orchards. Building new homes. Life continues. You should visit sometime and see what we've built from the ashes." The warrior tending gardens. Valera thought about everything she had witnessed. Tay defeating Kring raiders with devastating efficiency, then going back to his normal duties like nothing happened. Una leading a desperate defense against the Vrek swarm, then crying while holding her daughters. Rue coordinating artillery fire with mathematical precision, then returning to teach children mathematics the next day. Warriors who chose to be something else, who wanted to be something else, but who could become warriors again when necessary. She thought about Hana's words at the embassy, about humanity's long history of warfare, about the terrible lessons they had learned, about their decision to choose peace after mastering war. Finally, Valera began to type. Her report was different from anything she had ever written. It wasn't a dry assessment of military capability or economic potential. It was a warning, and it was a recommendation. After 3 months of close observation, I must revise my assessment of humanity completely, she wrote. This species represents the most significant threat to galactic stability I have encountered in my career. Not because they are aggressive, not because they desire conquest, but because they possess capabilities that few other species can match, combined with a demonstrated preference for peace that makes those capabilities easy to underestimate. She described Tay's fight on Station 7 in clinical detail. She included footage. She explained that he represented not an elite warrior, but a standard human with basic military training. She described the defense of Haven, the speed of their mobilization, the efficiency of their tactics, the fact that farmers and teachers had repelled a Vrek swarm that would have devastated most colonies. Every human receives combat training, she wrote. Every single one. Their entire population represents a latent military force of unprecedented size and capability. They hide this behind friendly smiles and peaceful intentions. But make no mistake, humanity knows war better than any species I have studied. She paused, considering her next words carefully. However, I must emphasize that humanity's preference for peace appears genuine. They have spent 50 years building a cooperative society. They trade fairly, negotiate honestly, and contribute positively to galactic civilization. They ask for nothing except the opportunity to participate in commerce and cultural exchange. The question the Council must answer is this: do we reject humanity based on what they could be? Or do we accept them based on what they choose to be? Valera sat back and read what she had written. It still wasn't enough. She needed to make the Council understand not just the danger, but the opportunity. She began typing again. I recommend full Council membership for humanity with the following conditions. First, immediate military alliance. If we reject them, another power will eventually recognize their worth and claim them as allies. Better they stand with the Council than against it. Second, transparency regarding their defense capabilities. They should not be required to dismantle their defense course, but the Council should understand its scope. Third, integration into Council security operations. Their expertise in warfare could benefit all species. She paused again, then added one final paragraph. I have witnessed humans fight for their survival. I have seen them grieve for their dead. I have watched them rebuild what was destroyed. They are dangerous, yes, but they are not our enemies unless we make them so. They are warriors who plant gardens, predators who protect the weak, killers who cry for those they've lost. They have mastered violence and chosen restraint. That makes them either our greatest threat or our strongest ally. We must choose wisely. Valera attached all her evidence, all her recordings, all her observations. She encrypted the file and sent it to the Council with highest priority. Then she sat back and waited. A message appeared on her screen. Not from the Council. From Ambassador Hannah. Commander Valera, I hope your time observing our people has been enlightening. I know you've seen things that challenged your initial assessment. I want you to know that we appreciate your fairness and your willingness to look beyond first impressions. If you're interested, I'd like to invite you to visit Earth. I think you'd find it beautiful. We have gardens that might surprise you. Valera stared at the invitation. Earth, the human homeworld. The planet where they had waged thousands of years of warfare before finally choosing peace. She wanted to see it. She wanted to understand these contradictory people even better. She sent her acceptance before she could overthink it. 3 days later, a package arrived at her quarters. A small wooden box with her name on it. Inside was a tiny tree in a ceramic pot of bonsai, her research told her. The art of growing miniature trees through careful cultivation. The note attached was from Tay. Commander, thank you for seeing us as we truly are. This bonsai is from Earth. It requires patience and care to grow, but it will live for generations if properly tended. Like peace. I hope it reminds you that warriors can also be gardeners. That strength can also be gentleness. Thank you for your fairness, Tay. Valera placed the tiny tree on her desk, where she could see it while she worked. She watered it carefully, following the included instructions. A week later, the Council's response arrived. They had reviewed her report. They had examined her evidence. They were concerned, alarmed, but also intrigued. The Council voted to grant humanity provisional full membership. Not just economic cooperation, but participation in security councils and defense planning. They wanted to understand human military capabilities better. They wanted humanity as an ally, not an unknown factor. Ambassador Hannah sent a gracious message thanking the Council for their trust. Valera prepared for her journey to Earth. She was nervous and excited in equal measure. What would she find on the planet where humanity had learned all its terrible lessons? When her ship entered Earth's atmosphere, she looked out the viewport and saw a world of blue oceans and green continents. Cities that blended with nature rather than dominating it. Lights that glowed softly in the darkness rather than blazing harshly. Hannah met her at the spaceport in a city called Seoul. The ambassador looked relaxed in casual clothes, far from the formal robe she wore at the council. "Welcome to Earth, Commander. I'm glad you came." They spent 3 days touring the planet. Valera saw museums dedicated to human history, including extensive exhibits about their wars. She saw memorials to the dead from countless conflicts. She saw the preserved ruins of cities destroyed in ancient battles, maintained as reminders of what humanity wanted to avoid. But she also saw thriving cities full of art and music. She saw farms and forests. She saw children playing in parks. She saw humans living peacefully, creating beauty, building futures. On her last evening, Hannah took her to a garden in the mountains. It was ancient, carefully maintained for hundreds of years. Trees, flowers, and flowing water created a scene of perfect tranquility. "This is what we want to be," Hannah said quietly. "Gardeners, builders, creators, but we remember what we were. We remember the cost of forgetting." Valera looked at the peaceful garden and thought about Tay fighting raiders, about Yuna leading desperate defenses, about the contradiction of warrior gardeners. "I understand now," she said. "You're not hiding what you are. You're choosing what you become." "Yes," Hannah smiled. "Exactly." Valera returned to Council Station with a new perspective. She watched humans in the diplomatic corps with different eyes. She saw the strength beneath their friendly exteriors, the awareness behind their smiles, the capability masked by their preference for peace. But she also saw their genuine desire for cooperation, their real commitment to building rather than destroying. Her bonsai tree grew slowly on her desk. She cared for it daily, watching it develop with patience. It reminded her that the most dangerous things could also be the most beautiful, that warriors could choose to be gardeners. That strength could be used to protect rather than destroy. Months later, when a crisis threatened council space, it was human security forces that responded alongside other species' militaries. They fought with the same efficiency Valera had witnessed before. They protected. They defended. They won. And then they went back to their gardens, their art, their families. Valera wrote in her private journal that evening, "Humanity remains the most dangerous species I know. But they are also the kindest gardeners, the most patient teachers, the most dedicated protectors. They are warriors who choose peace every single day. And that choice, renewed daily despite their capability for violence, makes them the strongest species I have ever encountered. Not because of what they can do, but because of what they choose not to do." She watered her bonsai tree and smiled. The galaxy was safer with humans in it. Not because they couldn't fight, but because they preferred not to. And if the day ever came when they had to fight, when peace finally failed despite their best efforts, the galaxy would learn what Valera already knew. Humanity had never forgotten how to wage war. They had simply decided to be better than their history. And that decision, more than any weapon or tactic, made them truly formidable. Valera looked at her bonsai one more time before turning off the lights in her quarters. The tiny tree stood peaceful and strong in the darkness, growing slowly, patiently, enduring, just like humanity itself.